Georgia and Portugal rounding out Pool C. Let's start with Wales. What's got us excited or nervous about what the Welsh should bring to the table?
For me, to be nervous, Warren Gatland. Any side that Warren Gatland coaches, he just seems to get them there. And yes, they've been poor the last 18 months or so. They've had players that have gone offshore, but I think players like George North and what Warren Gatland can do with this team, I think their forward pack, I reckon what they'll deliver, Wales.
I reckon they'll be okay. You look at that squad, you go through that squad and the experience with Faletau, Lydia, Biggar, Reece Zammit. Like, this is a good Ansky.
I think that's what you're
team. This is a good team.
It is on paper. But, you know, I just think that their past form, the last 12 months, what's been happening over in Wales with the players' salaries and whatnot, I think it's just too much to just push to the side and say, look, they've got to. Because they do have a great side on paper, but I don't think they'll produce the goods this World Cup.
Well, this is important too. We're going to talk about September, the pool stages. We can worry about October when the knockout stages come and Wales good enough to play, you know, New Zealand, France across the other side. When you're measuring them up against Australia and Fiji, they are right in the mix. Any of the three can make the quarterfinals. They'll produce it, and don't be afraid to see Gatland have a really pragmatic approach to playing both Fiji and Australia, taking speed out of the game, trying to control territory. He won't care if they win by a point. He's trying to qualify for the quarterfinals. The great thing for Wallabies fans is Wales and Fiji play each other straight away, first weekend, so you get a real gauge on where both teams are at, but also what the path to the quarters look like for Wallabies.
That's probably the biggest game for Wales, is the first game against Fiji. You win that, and most likely you're in a quarter-final.
Yeah, and if you're a Wallabies fan, we love Fiji, but the best thing that could happen to the Wallabies is Wales win. Because then if the Wallabies beat Fiji, they are in the quarters.
Okay, well, let's get our eyes around Fiji. Had a terrific lead-up. Couldn't have done any better on the way through. Rolling England at Twickenham for the first time ever. They played them 8 times previous, never got close. Nailed England at the home of rugby and are on fire at the moment.
I think the chickens are coming home to roost in the sense that they get to play week in, week out at Super Rugby level. And we see that. Unfortunately, for a proud Pacifica man, I would love to see that with the Samoan boys or the Tonga boys. But with the Fijian, the chickens have definitely come to roost, beating England last week. And a lot of talk has been about England and how poor they were. I'd like to think how good Fiji were. Yep. They were great, weren't they? The special thing about, Timmy, you'd be able to attest to this, that the special thing about the Fijians is that they're big, athletic, strong, and they can generally beat that first defender. And then the players come in, and then they create space elsewhere if they don't get that off-hurdle way.
Yeah, well, they're now ranked higher than the Wallabies, you know, first time in a long time in the world rankings. But Simon Raialui, you look at the way that they play an unstructured sort of game, but they've now got a set piece. They haven't had that for a long time. They've got a set piece that obviously did well against England, and that's going to be the challenge for Wales, the set piece and the unstructured play that Fiji do.
Yeah, there's a couple of elements to Fiji. Sonny, you touched on them. It's playing in Super Rugby week in, week out. A core group of them are part of that World Cup squad. And then every World Cup cycle, they get time together. The players that play in Europe, the players that are scattered around the world, it's the only time Fijian players spend time in camp together. So every World Cup they perform well. 2007, they were that far off winning in Marseille against South Africa and bundling out the future champions. You pair that with what Sonny mentioned about playing Super Rugby, and you also go, well, it used to be, we'll get them at scrum time. The scrum is good. Their only real Achilles at the moment, their Achilles heel, is their line out. That's where the Wallabies and the Welsh put pressure on.
How good was it to see them not go to a flashy training centre and do those sand hills back home in Fiji?
That would break the beast of them.
You think the Wolves are separate birds? You know,
I can tell you,
I think that's where the young team comes into play.
Yes.
Sorry, when the young team comes into play, because he understands the style of, you know, that Fijian flair, but then just pulling back and just going to set piece.
And then the experience of Teddy Teller, who can lean into 10 as well. Through the backs, it is it's arguably the most stacked back line of the World Cup. Yusufa Masi killed it. Super Rugby Pacific. Vinaya Bossi, the boss man, killed it. Raditya Munda killed England the other week. Semi Radradra, Weiss, Naya Valevu. Tell us a bit about what makes Semi Radradra such a key player for Fiji and could potentially be the player of the tournament.
Because he grew up playing rugby league.
No,
but in all seriousness, he's a world-class operator. I just think having that experience at an elite level in another sport, he's been able to bring that back, keep his core values as a player, understand what his DNA is and what he brings to the table, which is power, strength, speed, but then also add that finesse in there, and that's typical of the Fijian team at the moment.
The big one too is Waisea Naifalevu. Lucky enough to play with him in his early years at Stade Francais. To see him develop from just an out-and-out strike player on the wing, he can play in the midfield, he's a leader off the field and on. The development of those players playing in top leagues right throughout Europe, and then coming back into that French squad. Yes, got threats over the park, but smart footballers that can threaten.
They've got threats, but defensively, I reckon that's another sort of weakness of them. That if you're smart, if you're Warren Gatland, you're having a game plan, you go, I'm not kicking a ball back to Fiji at all in the first game.
Yeah, or dropping a ball.
No.
Kick the touch.
Kick touch, get the ball out, throw 13.
So what happens in that first game? Let's throw them down now. Wales v Fiji. Who wins?
I'm going Wales. I think they'll be too strong. They've got too many big names. I think Warren Gatland, his game plan will stop that sort of... The batch you just spoke about. What do you got, Sonny?
I'm Fiji. I see Fiji and Australia top in this pool. Hands down.
Yeah, I think it's clouded maybe by knowing that it's better for the Wallabies if Wales win. I think Wales, if they can take all the pace out of the game and play point to point, then they can control that.
Okay, I'm again, the conditions might play into the Fijians. It's got a real nasty feel about that.
You know what I was thinking? We're talking about off here. Do you think the conditions haven't been spoken about enough? It's bloody 30 degrees.
Mate, it's that hot. It is brutal. Georgia obviously will play against Wallabies. Lelos, big, powerful. We know them fairly well, and they'll go in as big outsiders against Wallabies. And Portugal, a team that you love. Let's frame up Portugal. Can Portugal potentially beat Georgia? That would send the most likely game they could get a win in.
You wouldn't think so, because Georgia, let's not forget, Georgia have only lost 2 of their last 18 games. One was, of course, against Scotland last week. They've been excellent. In the last 13 months, they've beaten Italy. They've beaten Wales.
Yes.
So they're a little bit of a level above. Portugal's road to the World Cup being here was absolutely outstanding. Too good for the USA in closing it out in the challenge in Dubai. Winning over there to qualify, beating the USA, making sure Kenya didn't make it. Hong Kong, too good for them. Patrice Lagisquet is a French legend, and they play the most expansive rugby in the World Cup. They're not going to win probably a game, but they're going to be the most entertaining team to watch. If you get to their game, get to a Portugal game. They have a really hard